What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the J Area Podcast. Of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. And this upcoming Saturday, we have the Clash at the Castle event. It's the first time in Scotland in quite some time. In fact, I'm not sure if there was ever a PLE or pay-per-view event that had taken place in Scotland. So to have such a high-profile event, especially one that's been highly anticipated since its first go-around in Wales, I'm very much looking forward to it. I know a lot of people, fans alike, are looking forward to this event, but the one topic of discussion that really comes to mind is that Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest match for the World Heavyweight Championship, and I don't think it's too crazy to argue that that should be the main event. I know a lot of people are looking at the Cody Rhodes AJ Styles I Quit match as a potential candidate for the main event of Clash at the Castle, but when you have the level of support and the fact that we're in Scotland, the home country, the hometown of Drew McIntyre, how can you not close out the show with Drew? That leads me to believe, what are they going to do? Because the WWE right now is in a very interesting spot, especially concerning the story that they've been telling with Drew McIntyre. I can remember way back when, let's wind the clock back to 2009, when Drew McIntyre was first introduced on WWE TV. He was described as the chosen one. He was introduced by Vincent McMahon, and then you see just the growth over time, whether it was an Intercontinental Champion, a Tag Team Champion, early on with Cody Rhodes, a member of the three-man band, and of course, he would leave the WWE, going through the independents, Impact Wrestling, for example, forging his own name under Drew Galloway, and then returning in 2017 as a member of the NXT roster, ultimately winning the NXT Championship. And then he would go on to have some success in the mid-card, and then win the Royal Rumble in 2020. And that's really where the story picks up, because Drew McIntyre was seen as always a good hand, a great character, great in-ring. But when he won that Royal Rumble event in 2020, again, mere months before the pandemic really hit the US, he was on top of the world. He was etched as one of the top stars, penciled in to be potentially one of the faces of the WWE. So much so that he would defeat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 36 to win his first WWE Championship. But ultimately that wasn't the case, because he would accomplish those feats, but unfortunately due to the pandemic and due to COVID-19, he would do it in front of an empty arena. The only fan in attendance was the one fan waving above the ring. And I look back at that, and I look back at the Thunderdome era, the era in pro wrestling where there were no fans. And Drew McIntyre really helped carry a lot of the load, a lot of the burden that was what the WWE was presenting at that time. Of course, you have your Roman Reigns and you have your bloodline storyline. But on Monday Night Raw, Drew McIntyre was the focal point. He had finally reached the mountaintop that he was trying to achieve throughout all these years, decades worth of hard work. And since then, he had been relegated to feuds against the likes of Happy Corbin, Sheamus, Gunther, and not to say that those were bad, but he never really got back to the mountaintop in terms of World Championship material. That wouldn't be until 2022 at the first Clash at the Castle event when he challenged Roman Reigns for his Universal Championship. Unfortunately, Drew McIntyre was unsuccessful in that attempt, as Solo Sikoa would run interference, preventing a new champion being crowned and continuing a title reign that would run 1,316 days. But since then, you look specifically at the last year of WWE programming, and it'd be real hard pressed to find someone that has been as valuable, as entertaining as a Drew McIntyre. His character work has taken up a notch. In ring-wise, we knew Drew McIntyre was always that guy. But to see him manage to ride the fine line between face and heel, he's very logical in his approach. Of course, when Jey Uso came over to Monday Night Raw, why wouldn't he be skeptical of his intentions, of his integrity? This was one of the men involved, responsible for running a reign of terror with the bloodline, Why would I be so quick to befriend him? It made sense. The crowd began to turn on Drew, but he always stuck to his morals. He always stuck to what he believed was right, and I think that's some of the most compelling storytelling that you can have in any form of medium, whether it's television, movies, sports entertainment, wrestling. For those individuals who believe wholeheartedly that they are in the right, that they are correct, that's compelling. So you see him become obsessed with the World Heavyweight Championship. He targets Seth Rollins in his pursuit of regaining the gold that he rightfully deserves. Of course, this is all in his mind. But with the return of CM Punk at Survivor Series last November, the attention shifted. Drew McIntyre now had this sense of resentment towards the CM Punk for how he was treated way back in the day during CM Punk's earlier tenure with the WWE. He claimed to expose CM Punk, that he was a fraud, that he wasn't who everyone thought he was. He promised to get rid of CM Punk. At one point, I believe he, along with Seth Rollins in the past, had referred to Punk almost as a cancer to the WWE locker room. So at the Royal Rumble event, when CM Punk made his huge return, his first match in 10 years under the WWE banner, we thought that could be the beginning of a story between he and Drew McIntyre. Or if CM Punk were to win, it would begin the storyline between CM Punk and Seth Rollins heading into that year's WrestleMania 40. But unfortunately, CM Punk would sustain an injury that has seen him sidelined to this day. We are now running into the month of June, pretty soon July, and CM Punk has only had the one match to his name, and that was at the Royal Rumble. Week in and week out, this has been the most compelling rivalry, storyline, feud, and that's CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. They have done an excellent job in building the credibility of both men and presenting this as a real feud, the real hatred between one another. So much so that it almost blurs the line, as I mentioned, between babyface and heel, because me personally, I'm a CM Punk fan. I've been one since day one. But there is merit to what Drew McIntyre is arguing. So at WrestleMania 40, when he finally has an opportunity at that World Heavyweight Championship and he defeats Seth Rollins, he relishes in that moment. You see him celebrating with his family, with his wife. But unfortunately, he loses focus. The very same thing he accused Seth Rollins of lacking into their lead of their match at WrestleMania 40 was that lack of focus. And he targets CM Punk as a way to gloat. And in the process, CM Punk, I mean, naturally, if someone's gloating in my face, I'm going to retaliate in some form or fashion. And he does so. Enough to the point where Damian Priest, Mr. Money in the Bank, who's been holding that briefcase for nearly a year, seized that opportunity and cashed in, making that world title reign only worth a little bit over 5 minutes. And that's what we led to. And now, fast forward, Drew McIntyre having another opportunity at said world title, now against the man that cashed in on him, Damian Priest. And it's in a premier event. It's in his home country. The WWE is right now at a crossroads because you could either do one of two things. One, you finally cash in on Drew McIntyre, on this iteration of Drew McIntyre. And now knowing that Gunther is what's waiting for him at SummerSlam, that's a big money match. I would very much look forward to that. If we were still doing pay-per-view, I'd pay for that match. But thankfully, because of Peacock subscriptions, we don't have to worry about that. A big moment. I know we're presenting Drew as a heel, but in that moment, he would be a babyface. I think that would be very, very hard to argue, especially given that it's in his home country. Or you present it in the flip side. Drew McIntyre loses. How does he lose, though? Because the Judgment Day are barred from ringside. So ideally, it's one-on-one. Priest versus McIntyre. But you know who we haven't seen in quite some time? CM Punk. We haven't seen CM Punk for a few weeks now. And I think the reasoning behind that is because he will be there at Clash at the Castle. I think he'll be there in some form or capacity, whether it's running interference or perhaps a little backstage run-in, just to remind Drew McIntyre that I'm here. Oh, like, I know you got a match tonight against Damian, but don't forget, I'm still here. And we got unfinished business. But if they have Drew McIntyre lose in that fashion, CM Punk is supposed to be your babyface. If you have that happen at Scotland, that's essentially a double turn waiting to happen. And whether they go through with it or not and see it as a successful double turn, I don't know. I think CM Punk's best work is as a heel. I think no matter on which end of the spectrum you place CM Punk, he's going to find success. But you do this in Scotland, you're now running the risk of a riot. We've seen how these European crowds can get. Very passionate, very vocal, and I love it. I'm all for it. That's what makes these shows more compelling. When you have an engaged audience, that's enticing. It makes me want to become more invested and involved in these storylines. It enhances the matchup in itself. And for anybody that tells you that that's not the truth, go back to the pandemic and see how important it was for fans to be in attendance. You look at one of the greatest matches of all time, WrestleMania 18. It was The Rock versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. 2002, WrestleMania 18. Not a bad match. But I've seen some of the best pro wrestlers. They make an argument. If you place that match on mute, it does not carry the same level of merit. A crowd can make or break a matchup. You can have a great matchup between two of the very best performers that this God's green earth has to offer. But if that audience doesn't care, then why should I? And that's the case with this match. Everyone in that arena, everyone in that country is going to want Drew McIntyre to emerge as the new World Heavyweight Champion. Will the WWE go through with that? Will they acquiesce to the wishes of the WWE Universe, specifically those in attendance for Clash at the Castle? Because if you don't, I don't know. I'm looking at it in the sense, look at CM Punk in 2011. Chicago, Money in the Bank. Hostile environment for a John Cena. And speaking of John Cena, you go back to 2006 ECW One Night Stand in the ECW Arena, Hammerstein Ball, against Rob Van Dam. Those are hostile environments in terms of passionate fan bases. I think the pop would be immense if Drew McIntyre can emerge as the world champion. And personally, I just don't see them going back-to-back Clash at the Castles, which has basically become a marquee event for Drew McIntyre. I mean, he was on the poster for both events. I don't see them having him lose two of those events. Very hard to believe. But it's possible. And Triple H and company have made it apparent that we're in it for the long run. There was criticism for having WrestleMania 39 conclude with Roman Reigns defeating Cody Rhodes, but ultimately it led us to WrestleMania 40, paid off. There was a lot of complaints about how the WWE was handling Chad Gable in his run against Gunther. Many thought he was supposed to be the one to unseat Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 40. But instead, we had Sami Zayn. And now, we have what's going on with the Intercontinental Championship title picture. The Alpha Academy has one of the more compelling storylines, with Chad Gable turning full heel. It's all about patience. It's all about patience. I trust the judgment at the end of the day, as long as it all makes sense. It's compelling enough. If you were to ask me right now, in my heart, I think Drew McIntyre is winning the World Heavyweight title. And then I look at it and I put my thinking cap on. I put my Booker hat on. And you look at SummerSlam and the way it's currently structured. We know that Gunther's having a world title match. That could easily go against Damian Priest. And then you have another matchup of Punk versus McIntyre, which quite frankly doesn't need the championship. That's a marquee match on its own. So rather than having just the one main Raw match, you have two. One for the world title and one between arguably two of the best acts Monday Night Raw has to offer right now. That's the way I would look at it. But I look at it in the sense that, are they really going to have Drew McIntyre lose again at Clash at the Castle? I can't see that happening. Maybe I'm wrong. Call me crazy. At the end of the day, this podcast is purely opinionative. I look at it in the lens of a fan. By no means am I professional. This is a wrestling podcast for fans by a fan. And that's my perspective on it. I would love to hear your guys' perspective on it. Please go ahead and comment down below. Do you guys think Drew McIntyre will emerge victorious? And if not, then what's the goal here? For the world title specifically, because I think everyone's in agreement. We know it will be Punk versus McIntyre at a later date, whether it's SummerSlam or not, because we still don't know the timetable of CM Punk's return. But we mentioned another high-profile feud on Monday Night Raw, that being the Sami Zayn, Chad Gable for the Intercontinental Championship. That's another match that I'm really looking forward to. And it's potentially to be the match of the night with two quality stars, two quality athletes at their best. And it's another one of those things where, are we pulling the trigger? Chad Gable has contended for the Intercontinental Championship multiple times over. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but this might be his fourth or fifth attempt, including the saga with Gunther. At what point are we just going to pull the plug on it or crown him? Because I look at it in the sense of this. If we were to have Chad Gable win, or rather, no, let's look at it from this end. If we were to have him lose, then the story with Sami's over. I cannot see Chad Gable losing this cleanly and still moving forward. If he loses cleanly, 1, 2, 3, in the middle of the ring, then it's over. There's no point of having this feud with Sami Zayn anymore. Otis will either cost him this matchup, leading to the ultimate or inevitable match between Otis and Chad Gable. And that's my play on it. I don't think we pull the trigger, though, on this Otis turn. I think it's... call me crazy, but I think it might be too soon. I think it might be too soon. We've already had a couple of hints, back-to-back weeks, of Otis hinting that he might turn on Chad Gable to only not do so. I don't think it happens. I think Chad Gable wins the Intercontinental Championship. I love Sami Zayn. But for the purpose of the story, I think Chad Gable wins the Intercontinental Championship, because you can only lose this so many times. And Sami Zayn could always get a rematch. We have a rematch at Money in the Bank, and that stretches it out. Because I think at SummerSlam, that's when we get Otis versus Chad Gable, and you have to find a way to stretch this out until the beginning of August. I think Chad Gable wins the Intercontinental Championship. And it leaves Sami Zayn in an interesting spot. He was able to defeat Gunther, but now I feel like this storyline helped elevate Chad Gable. Sami Zayn did his part by essentially making a new star. Chad Gable can now fill in that position that Sami Zayn was in. And you can have Sami Zayn now elevate to the world title picture. Because as soon as that concludes between the whole Gunther, Damian Priest, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, whatever the case may be at SummerSlam, you can now slide in Sami Zayn, who has proven in the last 2 years, and his whole career, quite frankly, but it's just been highlighted to an extreme extent these last 2 years to be a great hand, reliable. The fans care about him. I care about him. Every time I see Sami Zayn on TV, I'm locked in. I'm invested, because we've spent so much time and equity and emotion in the story that Sami Zayn has been telling. He's a main event player, and I hope to God one day they put the strap on him, whether it's a WWE title or the World Heavyweight Championship, because I do think Sami Zayn has earned that. He's done so well in the position that he's been given, not only in his time at NXT, but in WWE. He's been able to maximize his potential, his efforts. And I think that's what we're moving forward to. I think ultimately, whenever you're leaving a program, you're leaving a feud, you want to leave both stars in a position that's greater than what they entered with. And I think at the conclusion of this Gable versus Sami Zayn feud, you'll have Chad Gable now at the top of the mid-card, holding the mid-card title, the Intercontinental Championship, and now elevating Sami Zayn to a main event spot. And I think that's an ideal world for both of them. And I look forward to that. Conversely, you look at the women's side. I'd be remiss not to mention Bayley, the current reigning and defending WWE Women's Champion. She will be defending that title against Piper Niven, again, in her home country of Scotland. And I love what they've been doing with Piper Niven, because we don't really get a lot of talk or action revolving Piper. But in the short time that we've had with her, we've now elevated her name, elevated her game, and she seems like a viable threat to the title. Obviously, we know, I think it's a foregone conclusion she's not going to win. And spoiler alert, I am picking Bayley to win this matchup. But it's almost like a precursor, like a training module, a pre-test, if you will, for what Bayley can expect against Nia Jax. A competitor, an opponent, a challenger that's on the bigger side. This is not going to be a walk in the park for Bayley by no means. I think it'll be a competitive matchup, but I think ultimately she'll win, because ultimately we're looking at that feud with Nia Jax. So I'm looking forward to it. And then you also look at the tag team champions, Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill. They're defending in a triple threat tag team match against Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, and the other team being Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. I just look at the build for this matchup, and I thought it was interesting. We knew, obviously, that the main story was Baszler and Stark versus our tag champs. But then we had interference from Dawn and Fire interjecting themselves in the matchup, which is fine. And it makes sense because it is in their home country. You want to have that representation at a PLE of this nature. But this last week on Monday Night Raw, having them lose that matchup against Baszler and Stark in the fashion that they did, I was kind of puzzled, a little confused. You almost want to present them as a viable threat. And I didn't get that sense from them. I would like to pick them. I would like to think that's a swerve and that's part of the deal. That we're having a little bit of doubt and not having them seem as formidable foes. And somehow they managed to eke out a victory here. But I think I'm going to ride with the champions retaining. I think we're going to stick with Jade and Bianca Belair, because I don't see the direction. There haven't been any hints of those two, having dissension or any disagreements. I think ultimately we will see a feud between the two, and that's a matchup for WrestleMania. Maybe a SummerSlam, but definitely for WrestleMania. But I don't think we're there yet. I think, again, another competitive matchup. I think it'll be fun. Anytime you have a triple threat of some sorts, it's kind of hard to mess that up. And I like the trend that we're going on. I think it'll be a great showcase for someone the likes of Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, but I'm going to rock with the tag champs to retain. Yeah. And that's not it. We already had the Intercontinental Championship. We had the Women's Championship, the tag titles, the world title, and I am barely getting to the WWE Championship, which will be contested in an I Quit match between AJ Styles and our current reigning and defending champion, Cody Rhodes. We're adding a stipulation to a match we've already seen. We saw these two compete at Backlash in France. And what was a great match. Phenomenal, to use a term from AJ Styles. And to add a stipulation like this ups the ante. And now it's gone personal. We saw on Friday Night SmackDown that AJ Styles duped us all. I mean, not really all of us. But certainly Cody Rhodes, tricking him into believe that he was going to be going into retirement. And that wasn't the case. Because AJ Styles found a way to propel himself to the front of the line. He's now the number one contender for this WWE title, I suppose. He didn't know where to go. Having lost to Cody, at the Backlash event, having lost the first round to Randy Orton, he lacked a little bit of direction. So where did he go from here? Well, you know what? If you won't give me the opportunity, I'm going to take it. And that's what AJ Styles did. I know we've seen reports everywhere that apparently Mama Rose is going to be in attendance for Clash at the Castle, which adds another layer of depth. Because who's to say AJ Styles, as a dastardly heel, doesn't direct his attention towards Cody's mom? Now that's compelling. And I saw somewhere that people were saying, oh, we were 100% sure that Cody was retaining, but now it's down to a 75%. I'm still at 100%. I have Cody Rhodes winning this matchup. I don't see him losing. Plus, they already ran that angle recently. You saw Edge have an I Quit match against Finn Balor a couple of years ago, and they used the whole Beth Phoenix, we're going to hurt her if you don't quit. They just recently ran that. I don't think they do it back to back. I don't think they do it again, especially with so much time. Well, rather, not having so much time run in between these matches. I think it'll be compelling. Like I said, I think the main event should be Drew versus Damian. So where do we place the Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles matchup? It could open. Honestly, it could open the show. But you're going to give these guys at least 40 minutes. And that's including entrances. I don't think they'll go 40 minutes in the ring. But that's a matchup that's going to have some time. So I would argue probably the order of matches, it'll probably be the Intercontinental Championship, and then I think we'll probably go to the tag titles, then the I Quit match, then the Women's Championship, because I think we should highlight that one-on-one feud between Bayley and Piper Niven as a little buffer, and then we get to the main event of Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest. I don't think we crown too many new champions. That's why I have the majority of them retaining. The only new champions to be crowned will be in the opener and the closing segment of the pay-per-view / PLE. That being, of course, Chad Gable and Drew McIntyre. But it should be a great show. I'm looking forward to it. I know you guys are looking forward to it, but please go ahead and sound off in the comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this PLE. What do you think about predicting this card? And let me know, who do you think will emerge as the winners from each respective matchup. Of course, that's just airing tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. So, if you guys please would, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue following the pro wrestling content that I produce on this channel. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next episode.